Age of Sigmar has a lot of factions, and I don't blame you if you're having trouble trying to decide which one you're going to play. So that's where this video comes in. I'm doing a Should You Play series where I'm going to cover every single faction in the game, and first up are the Cities of Sigmar. This is a very diverse faction with 3 different races being featured: the humans, the elves, and the Dwarden. So we're going to be covering some basic questions that people might have. What is the playstyle of this army? What is the types of models that you're going to be playing with? How are you supposed to get started? What things should you buy first? And any other questions that I might have come up with. Now, hopefully this video ages well, because there is some debate to whether this is going to remain a 3-race faction or if it's going to become a human-only faction. I personally believe that the elves and the Dwarden are here to stay, although they might get updated at some point with some new, fresher models. I think that's definitely coming for the Dwarden, as they've already been removed from the Age of Sigmar store, but they were included in a very recent faction pack that has all the stats and information that you need to play your Dwarden friends. First off, let's talk about the play style of the Cities of Sigmar army to see if it's something that you would be interested in. So these are your common soldiers. These are the everyday people of the mortal realms. That is to say, individually, they are weak. So they aren't some giant demon or dinosaur or, some other supernatural being of might. But while these individual units may be weak on their own, this has several benefits. First of all, it means that your models, your units, are going to cost less points, which means you can have more of them in your army and you can be moving across the battlefield doing all sorts of things. It also means that there's a lot of synergies to make your models better. There's going to be things that you can do when you build your list and when you're on the table to get your guys to all work together and get the absolute most power out of them to give them a fighting chance. The faction ability, Offikar's Orders, allows each of your heroes to give 1 buff a turn to a friendly unit. So the more heroes that you bring, the more buffs that you can dole out, but keep in mind, this affects your army building. You won't be able to be just spamming heroes to have a ton of buffs. The buffs range from increased movement to more attacks when you're charging, to debuffing your enemy when you shoot at them, to holding strong in combat with increased defense. The Cities of Sigmar have a ton of different ways that they can be built and played. We've already kind of talked about the 3 races: humans, Dwarden, and elves. You can build solo armies with just 1 race, or you can mix them all together. It's up to you. But you also have access to a lot of different shooting units, lots of cavalry, and there's also wizards and priests in this army. The only thing you don't have a lot of are big heroes that cost a ton of points and do things totally on their own. Now, don't get me wrong, Cities of Sigmar does have some nice named heroes that can pack a real punch, and they are still mortal at the end of the day. So they're going to lack the power of some of the other centerpiece models that you might see in other factions. Because Cities of Sigmar are not elite, it means that it's going to require more practice to get the most out of these units, because you're not just going to win if you run things into combat, because your models are weaker than a lot of other factions' models. You're going to need strategy. You're going to need to play the game, which means scoring points, not just fighting it out. It means going to do some battle tactics around the map. It means picking up objectives and holding on to those objectives. But you do have very powerful spells and prayers. You have the Free Guild Cavaliers, which are incredibly durable, and they do a ton of damage when they're charging, but you just need to get the most out of their offensive power by always be charging. That means powering through, getting out of combat, and then coming back the next turn, countercharging, whatever it is, just so they don't get stuck on their low power mode. This faction is generally played as a castle army. It means that your units stick together as one big block in order to protect and buff each other. You have walls of units that stop the enemy's attacks. You have lots of shooting and some spell casting to fight back. And then, as mentioned just prior to this, you have cavalry and specific heroes like the Free Guild General on Griffin that can charge and punch back. Just be sure to keep them on the move so that you can keep charging and keep them alive. We'll talk about the model range next. So Cities of Sigmar has a lot of models to play with. This is in part due to being the historical dumping grounds of models from the old Warhammer Fantasy Battles game. So when the game transitioned into Age of Sigmar, a lot of the factions units were pulled into Cities of Sigmar from all these different, things like there was Wood Elves and High Elves and Dark Elves and Duarden and Empire units and all this other stuff. So we still have a ton of models. A lot of them have been removed in the past, but we still have lots. We have 23 hero units. 15 of those are human. 5 of them are elves, and 3 of them are Duarden. We have 29 non-hero units, 11 are human, 10 are elves, 6 are Duarden, and 2 are monsters, although those monsters have the elf keyword. On another note, I should mention here, I mentioned at the top too, that all of the Duarden units have been removed from the Age of Sigmar store, and now they are available. They're still on the website, but they're under the Old World section, under the Dwarven Mountain Hold. So you can still find them, you can still play with them. Don't worry, they're going to be in the game for a while, and I think they are going to get brand new sculpts for Cities of Sigmar. That's my personal, hypothesis that I have, so I can't wait for that to happen. But if you are worried about the future of Elven and Duarden units, then you can always stick to a human army. The Duarden and Elf units are at the very least going to be updated with brand new sculpts, and I think there's a small chance that they get removed entirely from the faction. I really doubt it though, just because they're part of all the lore and they're part of all the cities. They're there. There's no point in not having them there. So if you were to get a Duarden or an Elf unit now, you really wanted to play with them, you would be able to play with them in the game for, 1 to 2 years, depending on when that first Cities of Sigmar battletome comes out and whatever updates it might have. Even if they were removed, you could proxy them for other units in the army, like you could use some Duarden, as they are in Age of Sigmar, as your steel helms or whatever you would want. But I know that it's very frustrating to have uncertainty around an army, so if you don't want to deal with that, that's fine. But at the end of the day, I also want to empower you to play with the models that you think are the most cool, that you want to use, that you want to see on the table that you've painted. Then that's what you should do and have fun with it. Next, we're going to talk about the aesthetics of each race as represented in their models. The human sculpts are brand new and they look amazing. There are some old holdovers from the Old World Empire with battle mages, the Celestial Hurricanum, the Luminarch of Hysh, and Freeguild Marshal on Griffin being a few examples. Otherwise, the new sculpts are gorgeous. So the steel helms are very customizable with many stances, tons of weapon choices, and this is all to represent that these are not the immaculate and organized armies that you might see with Lumineth Realm Lords or those are the High Elves. These are regular people. They're being outfitted with whatever is on hand, and they're going out into the realm to defend or establish new cities. We also have the Freeguild Cavaliers with wonderful details that are very fun to paint, again with weapon customization available. The Freeguild Fusiliers, your gunners, they look outstanding when they're finished, and the Great Cannon is ridiculous. I also love the Fusel Matron Ogre Warhawk. I strongly recommend it, even though it is sometimes kind of difficult to fit into an army list. The elves are a holdover from the Dark Elves in Warhammer Fantasy Battle. You can go into a classic Dark Elf army with some infantry, crossbow wielders, spearmen, and cavalry, or you can lean into the seafaring corsairs, plundering the mortal realm seas, stopping off at the ports of the free cities. You also have some monsters, an assassin, and a sorceress who can be on or off a black dragon. The Duarden have a very small range, but it's quite powerful. They have very good defensive capabilities, but lots of damage in the form of hammerers. The trade-off here is that they have lower movement than the other races, but we don't mind. The Runesmith is a very valuable priest hero, and the hammerers are the consensus best infantry unit for Duarden, with both survivability and damage packed into one package. So if you go heavy Duarden, you'll want to add a Warden King hero as well, so you can lean into the shooting, maybe with a few units of Iron Drakes and have multiple regiments built out for your dwarves. I'm not going to do a deep dive into the lore of Cities of Sigmar, but if you're really interested in learning a bit about the faction, you can check out my Every Age of Sigmar Faction Explained in 24 Minutes video for a little bit of information on Cities of Sigmar, but also other factions. I also highly recommend the Warriors of the Free Guild Omnibus. It contains 9 different stories that will give you a ton of information about all the different races and the cities and the lore and everything. It's absolutely incredible. I just finished reading it myself and I highly recommend it. In the future, I might do lore videos about Cities of Sigmar, so if you want to see something specifically, let me know in the comments down below. If you are enjoying this video so far, if it's been helpful, I mean, you've got this far, then please consider subscribing and liking, leaving a comment down below for the algorithm to help my channel grow. I really appreciate it, and enjoy the rest of the video. I don't think that the Cities of Sigmar are very difficult to paint. The new sculpts have a ton of detail, and that can be a little bit intimidating, but you can really go as deep as you want with it. It can be incredibly detailed and time consuming, but it can also be a quick job that looks really good. And take it from me because I've done it myself. The newer human sculpts, they have so much detail and customization, so there's all of that, but the older ones are going to be a little bit less detailed, and that's another reason to hope that we have new sculpts coming for the Dwarden and the Elves. Now, if you buy the Fusiliers, I would recommend that you do the shields separately. Otherwise, I've painted everything as a single model so far, and it's gone quite well. If you pick a specific Cities of Sigmar to be from, then you could pick up the 3rd edition Battletome, as that has painting guides for every single city. But also, every single box of the new human units comes with a transfer sheet that has all the heraldry for every single city, plus some miscellaneous stuff that you can add on as well. This army might cost a little bit more than other armies depending on what's available to you on the secondhand market, because you have to buy more units to fill up your army list. We have lots of cheap units, and yes, steel helms don't cost as much as other units do, but it can just take a while to get that all together. And because we have more models in each of our units, it means you have to paint more. I mean, some models, it's pretty fast to batch paint, but still, that's something that you have to consider, and it might cost you more in the long run as well. But at the end of the day, any army at all can be expensive. You're always going to be adding to your army, getting new models that you want to try out on the table. So just set a budget and don't race to 2K. That's going to be fine if you take it slow. If you were wondering on how to start out, the Cities of Sigmar Spearhead is going to be the best place to start, because that allows you to play the Spearhead game mode with just the contents of the box. And fair warning, this is one of the harder spearheads to win with. The cannon is kind of up and down. There's a bit of luck involved, not just in the cannon hitting, but also the cards that you draw on your turn. So it can be difficult to get over the line, but has a lot of potential. Your future purchases are going to depend on which direction you want to go with your army. So some people like to go really big into cavalry. If you wanted to buy the army box, which you might find available in different stores or online, then you'll get a ton of great models for your army, and I think that would be a really great purchase. The Battletome will be outdated, but like I said, there's cool information in there. There's accessories and things that are in there as well that are just outdated, and you won't be able to use those. But overall, it's a really good box, and when you price out the models, buying them individually is still a good deal to go buy the army box. It's actually a good idea to get a second Spearhead box as well, because you can use all of the models that came with it, again, except for maybe the Cavalier Marshal, but in the short term, you could use multiple of him. But having more steel helms, that's great. If you have more Cavaliers, that's really good, and you can even run a second cannon. A lot of people are running second cannons. If you want to go into shooting, then you're going to be buying at least 20 Fusiliers and reinforcing them to be one single unit of 20 Fusiliers. If you want to go even further into shooting, then you'll buy another 20, although I would recommend that first you just stick to the first 20, try it out, see if you like the playstyle. You know, shooting can be fun. Some people don't like being shot at. It's something that you want to experience first before you just go and buy 40 Fusiliers. If you want to build Elves or Dwarden, then you'll have a little bit harder time finding those kits depending on when you watch this video. Things might be sold out, but right now everything's in stock, which is great. But you can also do some other things, like for example 3D printing, or buying models from other war games and proxying those as Elves, proxying those as Dwarden. As I said with the Dwarden, you're going to buy probably 2 boxes of hammers and a Rune Lord, and that would be a really good starting regiment where you have a hero, you have your infantry, and you're inserting that into your human army. You could also look at, for Elves, the Dark Riders. They're really good cavalry, and the Executioners are a very powerful, infantry unit that can deal a ton of damage. Maybe you'd bring a Sorceress as the hero, but there are other options for Elves as well. Let's talk a little bit about the army stats here. So humans are going to hit and wound on 4s and 4s. Dwarden and Elves are slightly better, as they on average will hit and wound on some combination of 3 and 4. and heroes don't follow all those rules. Depending on the hero, they might have better stats than the infantry does, but you know, it just totally depends on the hero. So if you're new to the hobby and you're wondering what I just said, basically, we just don't have the most accurate army in terms of landing attacks, but we do have some average options. Specifically for shooting, we have actual ways of increasing our chance to hit and our chance to wound, so that's really good. Lots of ways to buff shooting in this army. The army also doesn't have a lot of rend, with most units between 0 to 1 rend. That means that we can't punch through good armor saves. If somebody has really good armor and you have high rend, you can still get through. There are exceptions, especially on ranged units. We have -2 rend, which is really good. There is a Dwarden prayer that I should mention, Forge Fire, which increases the Dwarden unit's rend by 1, which is very good. In terms of durability, the majority of the army is on a 4 or a 5+ save. It means that our models are not that tanky. There are some exceptions. Again, the Dwardens are mostly on 3 saves. The Free Guild Cavalier, the Drakespawn Knights, those are all 3+ saves, and that means that those units are a little bit tankier and can take more of a punch and fight it out longer on the battlefield. This is just a loose summary of the stats. It's not a, you know, answer all deep dive, so keep that in mind. There are exceptions to what I said above, but this part of the video is just to give you a general idea of what the army looks like stat-wise. So in conclusion, Cities of Sigmar is a very fun army. Take it from me, I've played them myself. It's not going to be the most powerful army on the table when you look at the units individually, but when you put them all together, you have a really strong army. And when a proper, you know, practiced player is using this, not me, you know, someone that actually knows tactics, etc., is using this army, I think they're one of the strongest in the game. So this is my first time making this style of video. If you have specific features or things that you'd like to see in these should you play videos, then let me know in the comments below. I'd love some constructive feedback. Otherwise, I hope this video has helped you pick your faction. Maybe it's helped you decide that Cities of Sigmar is not for you, and that's helpful too, so that's great. If there's any information that you want to share with people in the comments about this faction that I might not have talked about, then go ahead and do that as well. Otherwise, I plan to make this type of video for the other factions. So until then, thank you for watching this video.